Egypt's new government is embracing the role of arbitrator in the undeclared 8-day war between Israel and the Palestinians. Its efforts are being hailed by world leaders.
Because of Egypt's historic responsibility towards the Palestinian crisis, and because Egypt is keen to end the bloodshed and maintain stability and security in the region, Egypt exerted great efforts and performed condensed communications with the Palestinian leadership, resistance groups, the Israeli side, and all international concerned powers, including the United States, as soon as the escalation began on Gaza.
This is a critical moment for the region. Egypt's new government is assuming the responsibility and leadership that has long made this country a cornerstone of regional stability and peace.
This recent crisis proves again that the status quo is unsustainable and that a negotiated two-state solution ending a prolonged occupation is more urgent than ever. Here too, I count on Egypt to help.
If the status quo does indeed change and UN support grows for an independent state of Palestine, are we witnessing the beginning of the end to American dominance in the region? Joining me now with their thoughts on this are Hussien Ibish, a senior fellow at the American Task Force on Palestine, and Roberta Seid, Director of Research and Education Policy at Stand With Us. And Roberta, why don't I start with you? Let me ask you that question. Are we beginning to see, are we witnessing kind of an end, a shift, if you will, where American dominance is not nearly prevalent in the region?
Well, it certainly was troublesome that the new president is head or connected with the Muslim Brotherhood. But what this seems to show is that there isn't much change at all. U.S. influence remains very strong. Hillary Clinton worked with President Morsi, and Egypt remains committed to having the United States continue to help it shore up its economy, desperately relies on U.S. aid. So I don't think at the moment we're seeing a dramatic change at all.
Hussien, sure. I think what we've seen in the past when it comes to American presidents is they want to be engaged, right, and then it becomes far too difficult and they backpedal. And we've even seen that in many respects with President Obama.
Sure.
There are risks involved for Morsi, too, aren't there?
Definitely. One of the biggest concerns that I think any government of Egypt has regarding Gaza is not to be sucked back into Gaza as the custodian of Gaza, not to become responsible for Gaza again, as it was between 1948 and 1967. This was probably the single biggest foreign policy priority under the late Mubarak administration, certainly when Israel had its conflict with Hamas in 2008, 2009. That guided Mubarak's reaction. And I think in a way it's also guided Morsi's restraint in continuing the essence of Mubarak's policies as well. I think he inched a little bit towards Hamas, but by millimeters. Basically, he wants, I think, to keep out of Gaza. And I think any Egyptian government would want to do that.
Well, you brought up Abbas, so let me shift to that question. You have two clear options, yes, and now what's happening at the UN indicates that people are going in that direction. So indirectly, he does win in a sense.
Well, what Abbas has to do is pivot from the vote at the UN, which he is going to win with a surprising degree of European support, a mass defection of Europeans that were supposed to abstain who are going to vote yes, or who were supposed to vote no and are going to abstain. He's going to have to pivot quickly to a rapprochement with the United States, because I do think the Americans remain the pivotal players here for two reasons. First, they're the only side that the Israelis trust, and secondly, no one wants to take their place. There's nobody volunteering to be responsible for the next failure of Israeli-Palestinian diplomacy or success for that matter.
Well, let me let Roberta jump in on this as well. Indirectly, do you think he benefited from this?
I think this is really Abbas taking a step down and asking for a more modest recognition from the United Nations, since he failed to get membership status as a state last year with the Security Council. And the General Assembly, as we know, and I'm sure Hussien would corroborate, is dominated by non-democratic nations, and there's an automatic majority voting bloc that consistently votes against Israel. So that in and of itself is not that surprising. in many ways, it's most unfortunate that Mahmoud Abbas chose to take this route and that the international community is supporting him. And in fact, as we have seen, since 1947, on November 29th, the date at which this resolution is being considered, since then, the Palestinian and Arab leadership has consistently rejected a two-state solution.
Well, that's not true at all. No, well, hold on. There are several.
Well, 1947, 1967, 1979,
in 1993. No, hold on. Let me correct the record here for a second. I really think it is necessary to recognize that the PLO, the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, formally recognized the state of Israel in 1993, and there's been no backtracking on that. In the exchange letters of mutual recognition.
Offers.
No, listen. They have recognized.
The point is that
they have recognized Israel, and there has been no reciprocal recognition. Now, what you were talking about vis-a-vis the UN.
Wait a second.
Hold on, let me finish my thought. I listened patiently while you talked. I think you should listen to me. You were right about the majority in the UN. And Israel's answer was sort of built into your response, which is, yes, you may have a majority, but it's based on the Organization of Islamic Conference or undemocratic states or Asian and African states or something like that. We have, it was implicit in your answer, and the Israelis used to say this all the time, we have a qualitative minority. We have the West with us. So you might have 50% plus one, but we have the developed world. We have the West. That's not true anymore. The solid no votes right now are the United States, Canada, and I don't know what the Czech Republic. Germany is going to abstain as far as we can tell. Italy has gone from abstention to a yes vote. France is going to vote yes. Sweden's going to vote yes. Spain is going to vote yes. It's an extraordinary set of defections. Israel does not have a qualitative minority anymore. The qualitative minority died. So you cannot say that only undemocratic states or only this bunch of irrelevant third world countries, which is sort of implicit in that argument, support the Palestinians. That's not true anymore.
Let's give
Good morning. It has changed.
I'm sorry, that isn't what I said. I said it wasn't surprising that the General Assembly voted yes. They would have done it without the Western states,
but they did it
who are supporting or abstaining from the vote. My point, my larger point is that this is a symbolic gesture.
True.
What we know and what we're very concerned about is, will this change the facts on the ground? Tomorrow or the next day or the next day, is the life of ordinary Palestinians going to be any different? No.
Well,
will
on
peace
that we
be any
agree.
closer? No. Yes. Will peace be any closer? No.
Well,
if Mahmoud Abbas went, may I just
finish?
Yes, you
may, of course.
If Mahmoud Abbas resumed negotiations with Israel, he could have a state. But the other thing that's of extreme concern is, who is the head of the Palestinian government? Is it Hamas in Gaza, or is it Abbas in the West Bank?
Oh, I can answer that question for you right now.
This is all a very symbolic
I can answer that question. No, that's not a real issue. No, that's not a real issue, because there is no document, Palestinian, Arab, international, Israeli, or anything that says anything other than the PLO is the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. Now, Hamas recognizes that. Hamas has said it supports this bid and has asked for the restructuring of the PLO again, because they know that the PLO is the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinians. Now, vis-a-vis negotiations, this is a very important point. Abbas has said that immediately following this UN vote, he is prepared to resume negotiations with Israel without precondition, which means at last dropping the settlement freeze demand, which was introduced by President Obama and then dropped by the United States a couple of years ago, but it's been very difficult for the Palestinians to move beyond. So I agree this is a symbolic thing, and I agree it doesn't change life on the ground for Palestinians, but it should be the first step. And that offer to resume negotiations without any preconditions should be the first step, first to a rapprochement between Ramallah and Washington, and then ultimately to renewed negotiations with the Israelis. And so I do agree with that.
Hussien, thank you. And it's a lively discussion, a great debate. Thank you
very
both
much
for
indeed.
joining us today.
Well, thank you.